Here we go. Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to Keeping Career Connections at Home Edition webinar series. My name is Michael Manzano with Career Connection at Bow Valley College, and it's great that you could join us today on what's looking to be a pretty nice day so far, at least in my area. And you know what? We're truly glad that you can be here together with us. You know, it is a different world out there these days. And we wanted to do this series just to let you know that even though your job search doesn't stop, then our services here at Career Connection doesn't stop either. And that means that we're still having an amazing career coaching, but instead of seeing our coaches face-to-face, then you'll be talking to them over the phone or even online. So as we do this webinar, here's just some ground rules. Just everyone needs to respect each other. Everyone's mic is off unless you do have a question and you do want to pop in. And you know what? Let's join in. Let's have some fun, because I don't know how you are in your isolation or maybe even quarantine. I don't know how many people you're in there with at your place, but you know what? Feel free to interact with each other, and definitely let's have some fun. So if you're watching this right now, then there is a high chance that you are better off than our displaced community here in Calgary. And ever since this current situation started, then most of us are staying at home. But the question is, what happens if you don't have a home to stay in? Well, today we are joined by one of my friends, David Conrad, who is a community engagement manager at the Mustard Seed. And Dave is passionate about teaching individuals and helping them rethink the topics of homelessness and poverty. Now, let me tell you, David is an amazing person with an amazing heart for people. So, Dave, you know what? Thanks for joining us today. And you know what? We're really excited to learn a little bit more about the population and maybe even how we can help out. So, why don't I turn this over to you and school us, my friend.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Michael. Thank you guys for joining today. I'm grateful that I get the opportunity and the chance to continue to teach on this topic, even though we can't be teaching and talking face to face. I'm grateful that we have the technology that allows us to do this kind of thing remotely. Like Michael mentioned, my name is Dave Conrad. I'm a community engagement manager here at the Mustard Seed. Currently, I'm joining you from our shelter, our Foothills shelter location in Calgary. We'll talk a little bit more about what that looks like later on in the presentation. But to get us going today, I have a few questions. And if you have an answer to the question, feel free to type it into the chat box. So my question to you is, what is homelessness? What is your definition of homelessness? If you have an answer, you think you know the answer, if you want to type that into the chat box and we can talk about that. What is your definition of homelessness? What does it mean for someone to experience homelessness? Any guesses, any answers would be great. If you don't have any answers, oh, people with no home living on the street. Great answer, Michael. Yeah. That's a great answer. No place to call my home. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So essentially, what it means to be homeless, it's not any more complicated than that. When someone is experiencing homelessness, it just means that they don't have a permanent place to live. They don't have a permanent place to shelter. That's what it means to experience homelessness. It's not a complicated definition. It's very simple, but unfortunately, there are a large number of people in our city, in our country, and around the world who are experiencing homelessness right now. And in a world like we're experiencing today, that can bring a lot of complications to living their life. So when we talk about homelessness, when we talk about someone who has no home, no place to shelter, no permanent place to live, there are three categories that we would use to define homelessness. And the first category is something simply called living rough. Living rough is defined as sleeping in a car, on the street, or in a park. So it's just temporarily staying somewhere that is not safe. So for instance, the founder of the Mustard Seed, when he was a teenager, he was experiencing homelessness and he was sleeping in an abandoned garage. That would be called living rough. That is somewhere that is not safe. It would be like people who in our city are experiencing homelessness who are living in encampments. Encampments are little tents, communities of tents in the parks in Calgary, deep in the woods, deep in the parks where they're not very visible. They get very, very creative in the ways that they create these communities. Sometimes they steal electricity. Sometimes they have camping furniture and sleeping bags and all sorts of things. But when it gets to -30, -20 below at night, that is not a safe place to stay. So we would call that living rough. The second category would be staying at a homeless shelter. And that's defined as a facility that provides food, a warm and safe place to sleep. So this is just a temporary solution to an experience of homelessness. And some homeless shelters in Calgary would be like the Mustard Seed, the Alpha House, In From the Cold. In From the Cold is a shelter that provides shelter for families with kids. There's the Drop-In Center, which is the largest shelter, emergency shelter in Western Canada. There's Avenue 15, which is a homeless shelter for teenagers experiencing homelessness. And the list goes on and on. There's women's shelters, there's all sorts of different things. But these are just temporary solutions to providing shelter for someone, a safe place for someone to stay and get fed and get their basic needs met. The last one would be temporary shelter. So this would just be something like couch surfing. So you have no place to go, but you have a family that you can stay with. You have a friend that you can stay with temporarily. Maybe you have enough money to stay at a hotel for a night or two. Maybe you're sick and you end up in the hospital and your lease ends while you're in the hospital. You have no place to go when you're discharged from the hospital. That would be temporary shelter or couch surfing. That's what we would refer to that as. The reason why this issue is so important for us to talk about, so important for us to understand is because currently in Calgary, and I would say this number has risen over the last month, 1 out of 10 Calgarians don't have enough money to meet their basic needs. So basic needs being food and shelter, and clothing and all the things that we take for granted so often. 1 out of every 10 Calgarians don't have enough money to meet their basic needs, which is a huge issue. And I think probably with the way the world is going right now, with the way our economy is going right now, that number is probably going to be significantly higher in our current culture, in our current society. So these are really, really important issues that we discuss, that we talk about, that we can better understand. Let's move on and see what else we can talk about today. So I have another question for you that I'm hoping you guys have some answers for. The reason I'm asking questions is because if you just sit here and listen to me for 45 minutes, ramble on and on about these topics, you might fall asleep. So hopefully we can have a bit of interaction. So the question I have is, why do you think people experience a homelessness? What are some reasons why someone may end up staying at a shelter or couch surfing or sleeping in an encampment? What are some reasons that might lead someone to living in this lifestyle? Lost their job, absolutely. Yeah, that's a really, really good example, especially right now. Mental health issues, mental illness, addictions. Yeah, absolutely. There's things like, disasters, finances, natural disasters, earthquakes, fires. You think of the floods back in, 2015 was it, in High River? A lot of people lost their homes. You think of the fires in Fort McMurray a few years ago. A lot of people lost their homes and had nowhere to go. Alex says abuse. Yeah, absolutely. There are a number of people who run away from abusive situations and don't have a safe place to stay. You're talking about minors who are experiencing homelessness. Sometimes it's abuse. Sometimes it's a disagreement with the parent, and so they run away, or they get kicked out and they have nowhere safe to stay. So they just end up couch surfing at their friends' couches. So there's all sorts of different reasons why someone may experience homelessness. And I love this wheel that talks about these complex causes. We get it from a website called homelesshub.ca, which is an incredible resource for further education. If you want to learn more about this topic, you can go there and they can give you a lot more educational information on this. But we get this wheel from their website, and it talks about 3 different factors of causes of homelessness. And the first would be structural. So things like poverty, being born into poverty, things like a lack of affordable housing. Calgary is still an expensive place to live. It's very hard if you're making minimum wage to have enough money to pay your first month's rent and your last month's rent. You're trying to move into a house. Lack of health supports, discriminations. These are structural factors that can lead to someone experiencing homelessness. The second would be something like a systems failure. So things like child welfare, things like new Canadians. If you're new to the country and you don't know how to navigate our system or even navigate how to find a job in our society, that can lead to poverty, which can lead to homelessness. Things like not enough beds at addictions facilities. There are not enough beds for people who want to recover from an addiction. Mental health, correctional facilities, hospitals. One of my coworkers tells a story about this interview she had with an inmate at the Bowden Penitentiary, and he had been there for 20 years. Now imagine what life was like in our society 20 years ago. You know, the iPhone didn't exist. You didn't look for work on the internet as much as you do now. There wasn't digital job boards really like there is now. And so when you exit a system like that, unless you've had the proper training, unless you've had the proper coaching on how our society works now, you can be very, very easily set up for failure, which can then lead to poverty, which can then lead to homelessness, which can lead to addictions, which can lead to all these different things in your life if you don't have the proper things in place for you. Like I mentioned earlier, hospitals, you know, if you end up getting sick, getting admitted to a hospital, and you're there long enough that your lease runs out, when you leave the hospital, where do you go? There's not enough adequate planning when you're discharged from these facilities. And the last one would be relational factors, which we talked about, things like traumatic events. You know, we have a facility that we'll talk about in a little bit specifically for veterans experiencing homelessness. Because when you've experienced that level of trauma, you can suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder, you can suffer from addictions and all sorts of different things. There's personal crises like a death in the family, like a job loss, whatever it may be, that can lead you to experiencing homelessness, mental and physical illnesses, and addictions. So the reason why it's important to talk about these different causes is because it's very, very important that we understand that not every single person experiencing homelessness has the same story. You know, so often in life, what we do to make ourselves feel safe is we tend to categorize people. We tend to say, well, that group of people is just like that because they're like that, because that's neat and tidy and simple in our minds. But the reality is, what causes one person to experience homelessness might not cause someone else to experience homelessness. If I come home at the end of the day today and a pipe has burst in my basement and my entire house is flooded, I have family that I can go stay with. But for a lot of people, if something like that happened in their lives, they don't have that support system developed. And so their best option would be to go to a homeless shelter to stay there. And so what causes one person to experience this might not cause someone else to. So it's really important that we understand that we need to understand people's stories before we make any call on who they are or what they're experiencing. I want to touch on one more thing before we talk about homelessness in Calgary specifically. And we use something at the Mustard Seed. We try as hard as we can to use something called person first language. And you may have picked up on it as I've been talking, because we believe that people don't deserve to be defined by their circumstances or their experiences. So when I refer to someone who's homeless, I use the term someone who's experiencing homelessness, a person who's experiencing homelessness, because we believe that they are a person first, that their experience, their circumstance doesn't define who they are as a person. They deserve the same respect and dignity that every single other person deserves. Nobody wakes up in the morning. No kid, when asked what they want to become when they grow up, says, well, you know what, I would really love to have nowhere to live. I would really love to have, you know, a mat in a shelter 6 inches away from my neighbor. You know, I'd really love to suffer from addiction when I grow up. You know, at the Seed, we believe that every single person deserves dignity and respect, and we try to treat them in that way. So when we talk about them, we don't want to define them by their circumstance. We want to define them as a person and a human being first and foremost, deserving dignity and respect. Let's talk a little bit about homelessness in Calgary. Best guess, how many do you think, how many people approximately in Calgary are experiencing homelessness right now? Keep in mind, these numbers are from 2018, so they're probably a little bit different right now, but we haven't got those numbers yet for 2020. But how many people, best guess in the chat box, how many people do you think are experiencing homelessness in Calgary right now? Any guesses? 5,000, good guess. Too many. Yeah, you're absolutely right. One is too many. Yeah. 10,000. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, these are great guesses, and it's a really, really hard answer to come by. The the way that we get this number is we do something called the point in time count every 2 years, where we survey the homeless shelters and volunteers go out and they talk to people. And the number we came up with in 2018 is 2,911 people experiencing homelessness in Calgary. Now, we actually believe that number to be almost double that, so closer to 6,000 people, because we can't survey everyone who is temporarily housed in, you know, someone's basement, or someone who's staying in a hotel room, or someone who's staying in a hospital. So we think the number is actually probably closer to 6,000 people in Calgary experiencing homelessness as of 2018, March 2018. So just some demographics. Within that population, 73% are male, 26.5% are male, and 0.2% are transgendered. 76% are between 25 and 64 years old, and 68% have been homeless for more than 6 months. Those are some staggering numbers. 68% of those people have been homeless for more than 6 months. When you hit that 6-month mark, it becomes so much more difficult to break the cycle, to exit the system, and to find a home of your own. So we've talked about homelessness, we've talked about what it is, we've talked about what it looks like in Calgary, we've talked about what may cause it, what may not cause it. Now we're going to talk for a few minutes about how the mustard seed helps. How are we responding? And we'll talk a little bit about, in the end, about how we're specifically responding right now in the midst of this global pandemic and what that looks like for us. But this is some of the ways that the mustard seed is responding to homelessness in Calgary. And so we're providing essential services. So this is our shelter. So at our shelter, a foothill shelter where I'm currently at right now, we have 370 emergency shelter beds. So you can see a picture on the right side of the screen. That's what our shelter looks like. We have mats on the floor. Those mats are bed bug proof. Those mats get sanitized every day. We provide bedding for our guests when they come at night that we wash every single day and redistribute in the evening. 370 beds in our shelter. And when it gets really cold in the winter, we do get very, very close to capacity. Now, right now, because we're trying to observe proper physical distancing, we actually have expanded our shelter, and we've moved the temporary shelter into First Alliance Church. We have over 100 mats at First Alliance Church, similar to what we have here, that we're sending people so that we can maintain proper physical distancing, so that we can slow the spread of this virus. Currently, to date, as of today, April 8th, we have had no cases of COVID-19 in our shelter system, which is amazing. We're so grateful for that. At our shelter in 2019, we provided over 300,000 meals. So we provide breakfast for our guests when they wake up in the morning, and as they go back downtown, they're given a bag lunch so they can have lunch. And then when they come back in the evening, they're given supper again. We also have a hygiene room at our shelter where we distribute over 100,000 hygiene items, so deodorant, shampoo, soap, everything that you might need, you can find in terms of hygiene items, toothbrush, toothpaste, all things like that. And we give out over 100,000 pairs of socks every single year to our guests staying at our shelter. Those numbers are staggering, and most of those items, the hygiene items and the socks, come from donation drives that businesses that churches do, that schools do. We have this great drive during Christmas called Warm Feet for the Street that schools partner with us in, and kids buy socks and they fill their socks with hygiene items and they donate them to us. And that carries us through most of the year for hygiene items. We're so grateful for the community that exists around us to help support us. It's just a really great picture of our shelter, of the dining room at our shelter. It's a converted warehouse right now, and we're doing the best that we can. The shelter is not just a bed and a warm meal. We are providing a pathway out of homelessness. We believe that our shelter should just be a temporary solution. This should not be a permanent place for anyone to live, because we think that everyone deserves a place of their own. So we have a team. We have teams working very actively in our shelter system, helping people move out. In fact, this week we've already moved people out of, in spite of everything else going on in the world, we've already moved people out of our shelter into homes of their own. It's very, very important for us that people have the dignity and respect of a place of their own to live, a place to call home. In 2019, we supported over 300 individuals to move from emergency shelter to permanent housing. And that is such good news because, like I said earlier, everyone deserves the dignity and the respect that comes from having a place to call home. So we also provide housing for individuals experiencing poverty and homelessness. We have 289 housing units in Calgary. If you look on the left side of the screen, I think it's probably your left. That's the apartment I normally have the building I normally have my office in downtown. It is the 1010 Center. This is a great question. What's the typical process for people to move from a shelter to their own home? So we have a team here at the shelter who will do intakes with individuals who are looking for it. They'll fill out the paperwork, and then our staff will find housing for them to move into. And so we can help provide their first month's rent and get them the funding that they need if they need it, or we'll help them find a job to help pay for the rent that they need. So they can either be placed in one of our housing units in Calgary or in a few different other organizations that have housing units as well. So like I said, we have 289 housing units in Calgary. The 1010 Center, which you can see on your screen, is the largest permanent supportive housing facility in all of Canada. We opened it in March 2014. It has over 220 apartments in it, and it's a really, really incredible facility. When I say permanent supportive housing, permanent means that it's not a transitional facility. So if someone moves in there and they're abiding by the regulations of that building, like any other apartment building has regulations, then they can stay there as long as they'd like. We do still charge rent. It's lower than market value, but we are a supportive facility as well. So we are staffed 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to provide the support for our residents at our apartment building. So they have resident engagement workers that they meet with. We provide community events for them to participate in. We can help them get funding if they need funding for their rent. We're there to help provide the supports that they need in that facility, and it has seen incredible success. This model has been very, very successful for us in our retention of our guests. And you can see a picture of the inside of one of those apartments on your screen as well. It's a beautiful facility. Most of the suites are bachelor suites, but we have one bedroom apartments and accessible suites as well in there. Show you a quick video of someone who lived there.
It took me years to get a diagnosis because my voices were literally screaming at me, "Do not tell anyone about us." My name is Barb Sarsfield. I'm a Mustard Seed resident. I've been living in the 1010 Center for about 3.5 years. I had a normal family, but my parents were very young and very naive. And
So sorry. We'll get back to that. I'm new to this whole online workshop. I'll pop ahead a little bit.
Anyone about us. My name is Barb Sarsfield. I'm a Mustard Seed resident. I've been living in the 1010 Center for about 3.5 years. I had a normal family, but my parents were very young and very naive, and there's no book on how to raise kids. They just tried to make me different. Well, my parents didn't even figure out I had a mental illness till I was in my 30s. But I didn't know anything about mental illness. I didn't know other people didn't hear voices. My family, my friends, my coworkers, they all began doing intervention phone calls on me. I decided to prove them wrong by sitting down and writing the story of my life. I finished what I had written, but I decided to proofread it. And I couldn't believe my eyes because I had 125 pages of gibberish. So I called into a program that I had helped start at TELUS, an employee family counseling program. And they got me into a very caring psychologist. And that was my first step into the mental health system. When I was in the hospital, and the first time I woke up and I didn't hear voices after going on the medication, I was terrified. I didn't know what to do with myself because I had had voices directing my every move for 34 years, and all of a sudden they're gone. When I had absolutely no place to go, I asked my parents if I could move in. And my dad insisted that I apply at the Mustard Seed, and it turned out to be the best place for me. I didn't realize how much they actually help you here. They help you to shine. Come here, you're welcome. You'll get the help you need, whether it's dealing with your addictions, whether it's finding a home. They'll do anything and everything within their power to make sure you have what you need. Don't be afraid to ask. That's what they're here for. And that's what they love doing, is helping.
This is just a great example of one of the members of our community. Barb actually has moved on. She now lives in a different facility. I think it's a seniors home, and she's doing very well. But I think her story is just such a great example of the different causes that can lead to someone needing the supports of an organization like the Mustard Seed, and what it might look like to live in a place like that. One of the taglines of the Mustard Seed is "Hope grows here," and that's what we want to do. We want to help people regain their sense of hope in life. Ed asks, are the suites single occupant? Yes, most of them are. We do have the odd case where a couple moves in, but that is more difficult because when a couple moves in, they both have to individually qualify to live in our facility, and sometimes that gets difficult. So most of the suites are single occupant, and there's no minors in our facility currently. We also offer wellness services at the Mustard Seed. We have an employment team. Our employment team found over 300 jobs for individuals in 2019. They do really, really incredible, really, really important work. We have community hubs. We have 5 locations throughout Calgary in communities to provide preventative support to families and to students and to youth and to kids. They're doing some incredible, incredible things. And we also have health and wellness offered. We have a wellness center downtown, and then we offer the similar services at our community hubs. So we offer advocacy, counseling, physiotherapy, occupational therapy, foot care, spiritual care, doctors and nurses, basically whatever someone would need in the realm of health and wellness, we can help them access through our wellness services. In 2019, we provided over 48,000 health and wellness services to 3,800 unique individuals. And those services, the health and wellness services, are accessible to anyone in the city. You don't need to be a client of the Mustard Seed. You don't need to be experiencing homelessness. You can access our health and wellness services if you need them. Really, really incredible, important work that they're doing. Like I mentioned earlier, we have this new initiative called Homes for Heroes that opened in 2019 in the fall. And it's a facility to help veterans experiencing homelessness and poverty. So we have 15 self-contained tiny homes and one family unit that will help veterans transition out of homelessness and extreme poverty. It's a really, really cool program. It's very new to us, so we're just getting it off the road, but you can see a picture of it there. Beautiful little tiny homes over in the Northeast Calgary, and that's a picture of Don. He's our counselor who works out of there. Just a really, really great program to support veterans. It's in partnership with ATCO. Like I mentioned earlier, we have our community centers. So we have our Neighbour Centre in Marlborough Park, which is our main community hub. We offer all sorts of things out of there: youth programming, yoga, counseling, advocacy, tutoring, art therapy, karaoke. There's a youth night every second week. There's $1 Rosso coffee, which is why I'm there when I'm there, because the coffee is amazing. If you need to use a laptop, you can use a laptop, and there's employment support out there as well. So we moved into the community so that we can hopefully try to prevent some of these struggles before they become extreme poverty and homelessness. And they're doing really, really amazing work in the community. So that's just a really quick breakdown of what the Mustard Seed is doing. We're operating in 5 cities right now: Edmonton, Red Deer, Calgary, Medicine Hat, and Kamloops. We've been around for 35 years in Calgary, and have had the privilege to work with many, many, many Canadian citizens over the years, and newcomers to Canada as well. So we're grateful to get to do the work that we get to do. Some ways that you can help if you want to get involved: fundraise and donate. That's a really, really important one for us. We rely very heavily on public support as a nonprofit. You can volunteer with family and friends at the Mustard Seed. Oh, why do people live rough rather than go to a shelter? That's a really great question. Some people just don't feel safe at a shelter. Number one, another reason would be maybe someone's been suspended from the shelters in Calgary for a variety of behaviors, so they really don't have anywhere else to go. One of the other reasons may be someone might have a pet, and there are no shelters in Calgary that accept pets right now. The closest one, I think, is on Vancouver Island, that is a pet-friendly shelter. So if you want to stay at a shelter, and you have a pet, your options are to live rough or to voluntarily give your pet to someone else or Humane Society. So shelters are good for some people, but they can be very, very difficult for other people in a lot of ways. It can be a very, very chaotic experience sometimes, but it is an important service. Where else do we have Neighbour Centres in Calgary? That is a good question. You're testing me here. I think we have one in Bridgeland. We have one in Marlborough Park. We have one in Manchester in a Calgary housing building. Those are the three that I can think of off the top of my head. But if you look on our website, theseed.ca, you can find all the locations of our Neighbour Centres where we provide coaching and advocacy at. A few other ways that you can help correct stereotypes and misinformation. There's so much of that going around all the time, and engaging people in conversations is very, very important to educate others. And lastly, treat everyone with respect. I think that's a good lesson for all of us to learn. Some very specific things that we need right now. We are adapting as quickly as we can to the unique situation that our city finds itself in. Like I mentioned earlier, we've had to open a temporary shelter at First Alliance Church and staff that and provide all the things that they need down there. So if you're interested, you can give to our pandemic relief fund. We also have a list of urgent items like men's clothing, men's shoes. We need blankets for all the new mats that we've opened over the past few weeks. So you can find a list of urgent items there. If you're interested in supporting us, you can feel free to contact me if you have any other questions. But do you have any questions for me? We've already asked a few, but do you have any others?
Yeah, actually, I've got a couple questions for you, Dave.
Sure.
First of all, thanks so much for doing that. That's a great presentation, and I mean, thank you yourself, like, for all the work that you do with our community there. So, I mean, how does your team stay safe?
It's a very good question. As best as we can, we practice proper physical distancing. We have PPE, so personal protective equipment, available to the staff, so masks, gloves. We're screening every guest as they come into the shelter. And if they're exhibiting any signs of the virus, we're isolating them and calling community paramedics so that we can get them tested and provide care for them. We're adapting as quickly as we can. We're trying to provide the best care that we can, both for our guests and for our staff right now.
No, good for you. I mean, you got to stay safe out there.
Yeah.
Does anybody else have some questions? I mean, you could type it into the chat box there, or if you're brave enough to unmute yourself, then definitely jump in. But I mean, you told us some great stuff that the Seed does, and the cool thing is when I got a tour from you a couple months ago, I didn't even know that the Seed does that many things. Now, are all those things accessible to everybody, or are they only accessible to the people experiencing homelessness?
Yeah, so all our employment services are accessible to anyone. Our wellness services are accessible to anyone. We're open to the public. We're here to support our city and our community as best we can.
All right, we got a question here from Alex. Are your community hubs and wellness centers currently running?
It's a great question. So our community hubs currently are not running, and our wellness center is running via phone line. So you can call into an advocate and they will help you access the supports that you need. You can find all their information and the phone number to call on our website, theseed.ca. And then if you click on About Us, you'll be able to find the proper information and get you connected to the right person.
Good question. And then, like, I know that you interact with quite a few of the clients on a daily basis, but how often do you do like frontline support, you know, maybe working in the shelters?
Yeah, I'm here to support as much as I need to be, whether it be on street level downtown when I'm working downtown, or working with the residents in our 1010 building doing community events, or I try to be at the shelter as much as I can, just to be present with the staff and to get to know some of the guests that we serve here. So my role does look a little different than a frontline staff, but when I can, I do hop onto the front lines.
Nice.
Yeah.
How about let's say like career opportunities. Let's say somebody has a heart like yours and wants to give back to the community, or just, you know, wants to help out. What kind of career opportunities do you have, or maybe like some career paths that you could talk about?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a pretty diverse organization, which makes it great. The broad range of services that we offer creates a lot of on-ramps for people with a variety of different backgrounds and educational experiences. So currently, right now, we're hiring 3-month temporary positions to be frontline shelter staff. You can find those on the website as well, theseed.ca. Under the employment at the bottom, you can find that tab and you can look at the job posting. I have a degree in counseling, and I was a pastor previously for 10 years. So that's my experience. That's how I ended up here. It is a very, very diverse group of people from a diverse background. And so if you're interested in stuff like this, I'd encourage you to check out our website and see what's available.
Yeah, that's great. And we'll have those links up on our website. And so then if anybody's interested, or if any of you guys know somebody who might be interested in helping out, then you could check out, what's your website, Dave? Is it theseed.ca?
Theseed.ca, yeah.
Theseed.ca, or else you could check out mycareerconnection.ca. So Dave, you know what? Thanks so much for being here with us today. We learned a lot of stuff. It's really eye-opening to see, you know, what you guys are experiencing there, even just right now, but even just in general, right? And thank you so much for helping out in the community. So
thank you so much.
Let's say if people have some more questions or they want to get in contact with you, what's the best way?
Send me an email, davidconrad@theseed.ca.
Perfect. David Conrad at theseed.ca. We'll probably have that up on our website as well. But these are interesting times. We here at Career Connection, we want to help you with your job search. Don't think that the whole world has stopped and that your job search has to stop as well. We do free one-on-one career coaching, and these days that looks like it's online or it's on the phone, but you know what? We're here to help you. If that looks like resume help or interview help, or even just knowing who's hiring these days, then we can help you with those things. So what you can do is you can go to our website, mycareerconnection.ca, or you can give us a call. All that information's on our website there. And to continue helping you to grow in your job search, and we're doing these webinars all month with different community leaders and organizations to give you updates on industries and to give you tips and advice to be successful in your career. So you can check out the list of those webinars on our website as well, mycareerconnection.ca/events. And just to give you a little bit of a teaser, what's coming up tomorrow. Tomorrow we have an amazing career coach. We'll be giving you tips on being professional and even how to use Zoom for those online interviews. So everything online. I'm new to this stuff, all this online and all this Zooming or whatever it's called, but that'll be a great one. So Dave, one more time, I just want to say thank you for joining us. Thank you for doing this webinar. And my name is Michael Manzano, here with Career Connection at Bow Valley College. And everyone, remember to stay safe, stay strong, and we'll get through this together. All right, everyone, thanks for coming. Have a great day.
Thank you.